With a growing family, we are running out of mudroom storage and hanging room. And it seems my stuff is what can't seem to find a home anymore. So I'm going to be building a second bench and storage area just across the room. Let's get started right away. Luckily, I have a bit of leftover white oak flooring which I think would look amazing as a bench. So I start off by removing the tongue and grooves of each piece. This way, I'll have a tighter and better gluing surface. I always use Titebond 3 for all my projects that require wood glue, and this one is no exception. Gluing these in two parts allows me to use my 13-inch planer to get each of these sections flat before gluing them together. After the glue dries, we sand it smooth with 80 grit sandpaper and work our way up to 120. The flooring material isn't thick enough to my liking, so I purposely made the bench larger in order to mite off two sides of the top and glue them back on. This gives it a beautiful thick slab appearance. I also just love how the end looks with the grain waterfalling through to the side. I used tape to make this glue up easy and accurate, along with some clamps. I added some particle board underneath the bench to give it some more rigidity. After all, it's meant to be sat on. And knowing my kids, they'll be using it as a launch pad to reach higher ground. I adhered the board using the best construction adhesive, Loctite's Max Premium. Then I add some weight to keep it flat and let it dry overnight. I sand down the edges smooth and add a radius using my sander. Now let's get this piece finished up with some stain. One of my favorite products to use on white oak is Rubio Monocoat's natural oil stain. It comes with a hardener which I stir in before applying. I use a cordless sander attached with a non-abrasive buffing pad to evenly and quickly apply the oil stain. While that's drying, I need to install some ledger boards to the wall which the bench will sit on. The star of today's project is this nifty laserlevel. I use my laserlevel not only for work, but very often for home projects such as this one. Here, it shoots a constant beam and makes installing the boards easy and, more importantly, level. If you are interested in any products or materials I use in this project, I'll have them all in the description below. Please check them out. Here I'm using the same Loctite Max Premium to attach the bench to the frame of the wall. I add some weights in the corner here for decoration. To support the floating bench on this side, I pre-made this support frame in the garage and pre-painted it before installing it. Since there was no stud to attach the support to, I made sure it was snug and glued it in place. Now that the bench is all finished up, I get started on the overhead storage bins. I want these to look identical to the ones already in the mudroom, so as not to look out of place. The whole construction will be made out of 5/8 inch MDF. Since the 4x8 sheet doesn't fit well on my table saw, I use a track saw to cut it into more manageable pieces. Now I go through all the pieces and add an 1/8 inch radius to soften the edges with a router. Now we are ready to assemble all the pieces together. Assembly was quite easy. I used Titebond 3 wood glue and brad nails to put it all together. I magnetically attached the laser mount to a wall and adjusted its height to line up perfectly with the existing overhead storage unit. You can also use a tripod with this mount. Prior to installing the storage bin, I marked out all the locations of the framing studs. I used a 16 gauge nailer to nail it all in place. Pre-assembling the storage bin beforehand made this part of the project go pretty fast. Now comes my least favorite part. That's filling all the holes, caulking, and painting. I always use Bondo's 2-part wood filler for all the nail holes that I left behind. After mixing, it hardens in about 10 minutes, so you can sand shortly after and continue with the project. I use trim caulk for all the corners of the bin and also where it contacts the wall. This way we have a seamless look. Before painting the bin, I went around the perimeter and painted it with gray wall paint. After letting that dry, I masked off the wall and used 1 coat of primer and 2 coats of white paint. This MDF really likes to absorb paint. Just keep that in mind. Taking off the masking tape is so satisfying. I love seeing those straight lines. Now, all that's left to finish is the vertical wall panels. I used glue alone to attach them to the wall since there were no studs directly behind them. I then paint the trim and wall white and remove more satisfying masking tape. And finish it off with some hardware, and voila, here's the finished project. Hope you enjoyed watching me build it from scratch. Thanks for watching, and subscribe to see what I'm working on next.